Hello, friends, and welcome to Elements and Alchemy, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Johnson, sharing the astrological, lunar, and tarot influences for the week ahead of February 8th through February 15th, 2019. We are just 5 days past Monday's Aquarius new moon, where we officially begin the process of closing out several cycles over that kind of span from the last 4 weeks to 9 years ago. So we're wrapping up a lot of cycles that we've been in. The most recent being the eclipse cycle that just happened between January 5th to just this past Monday. We're wrapping up a larger eclipse cycle within that that was on the Leo Aquarius axis while the moon's nodes were in Leo and Aquarius for the last almost 2 years. What else? Let's see. We're also wrapping up Uranus's time in Aries that started, I would say, like early 2011, late 2010. Chiron's time in Pisces, also late 2010, early 2011. And then within that framework, I am also seeing like a very big connection to the Uranus-Pluto square that took place, I want to say like about 5-6 years ago. It was building between like 2013 and building. And then, and kind of perfected around like late 2014, early 2015, like in that area. And then, has been waning and waned since then into 2016. But all of those cycles were asking us to, Uranus and Aries, free our will to just be. Free our will to be just be individual people on this planet. Individual wills on the planet. Chiron and Pisces, the wound of separation that we have because we want to individuate, because we are individual wills that separate from this big collective. There's a wound that we carry of separation from our source, which can also show up as, and often does show up as, separation from a part of ourselves that is intrinsically divine. And that's that spark of spirit that wants to break out and be free and, act and be an individual within this larger group. So taking that spark and then having, the Uranus-Pluto square, that was taking that spark and breaking it free of any kind of confines that were disempowering, any kind of confines that did not allow for the free expression of the freedom of our own individuality, the freedom of us to just be here as individuals on the planet, just existing. Just that's what it just took all of that and broke it all down. So whether it was external things, whether it was internal things, whether it was, familial things, like anything that was holding us back and keeping us from being an individual in our own right, that all got torn away with that Uranus-Pluto square. And then we had the eclipses along the Pisces-Aquarius axis where that individual spark that was, healing from the wound of separation and, taking its power back from any structures that weren't allowing it to just be as an individual, then it wants to express. This individual spark wants to express itself. It wants to express. And it wants to create, and it wants to take that expression and those creations and make connections with the greater good, the greater community of people and things that we have. And it wants to create an ideal existence, an ideal life for itself, because that spark that we have, that individual spark of will, that's our spark of divinity that makes us, if you can, I'm air quoting, but like God. It's our free will. Aries is free. It's will. It's our will to be free. And that free will expresses itself through Leo in creation. What do we want to create? as individuals with our own unique sets of propensities and talents and circumstances, and what do we want to create with that? What kind of life do we want to create for ourselves? What kind of person do we want to be? Who do we want to be with? What do we want? What work do we want to do in the world? Who do we want to connect with through all of that? Through who we are, who and what do we want to connect with? So that's kind of been the backdrop of what this new moon is. That's the cycle that this new moon is wrapping up, while also, because of all of the things, cycles like that, it broke a lot of things down. It built a lot of things up and made us see a lot of things, but it broke a lot of our internal structures that we were kind of holding on to that made us feel safe because we've just always kind of known them and had them. And as we've expanded our sense of self and our use of will and, coming into a place where we're empowered and know that we can create and know that knowing more about who and what we actually are and being in that truth, we're now asked to build new structures for ourselves, build a life, build our own lives to reflect the truth of who and what we are and what we want to create and who we want to create with and where we want to be creating. And it's now time to build on that. So this new moon 5 days ago, it's wrapping up that cycle. So in the next 4 weeks, we'll be wrapping up that story while simultaneously starting to build for what's ready to birth in the coming year. So that's kind of where we are right now. And today, this new moon was asking us to really expand our concept of what's possible for us now that we know that we're empowered and now that we know that we can create and now that we see more options. The new moon was asking us to take a broader view and look at the options that we have. And now we have a blueprint. Like I said last week, Aquarius is our blueprint for the life that we want to create. So we have this blueprint now, and now it's like expand upon it, make sure it's true, make sure it matches who we are now. So that's what this new moon is allowing, and this cycle, this new moon cycle is allowing us to revise our blueprint and to expand it to fit the expanded beings that we are now. So today, which is February 8th, we have the moon has moved from Aquarius to Pisces, and the moon's been in Pisces for the last couple of days. And it's after meeting the sun and then meeting Mercury and then meeting Lilith. And the moon is our emotional selves. It's how we process our feelings and kind of understand and take in what's going on around us on a very unconscious level. But it's how we emote. It's how we feel. So now, with the moon being in Pisces the last couple of days, it's been a lot of feeling about where we're going. We're kind of feeling our way through, even as we're taking this kind of big picture view of, what's available to us and expanding our options and being able to dream. The moon is allowing us to dream and feel our way to where it is that we want to go, where it is that our highest selves are asking us to go to now. Like, what are the places that we're going? And this morning, the moon is conjunct Chiron. And this is a really, really important conjunction because it's the absolute last time that the moon is going to conjunct Chiron in Pisces for like another 50 some odd years. So the moon's journey after this new moon and meeting with the sun and Mercury and Lilith, like I said, and now the moon is hitting Chiron, which Chiron is about transcending and rising above our woundedness to see the gifts that it gives us, to see the gifts in our humanity, to see the gifts that we get from being just regular human beings here on the planet doing regular human being things, and that we are not really separate. So the moon is going to kind of get a transcendent view. Like our emotions are going to kind of, it won't be without like maybe even a bittersweet kind of pang. I feel like this whole week coming up is going to be like a really bittersweet kind of week. And as the moon moves into Aries as well, we align our emotions with our will to act. So we're still in blueprint time. And now like we've been immersed in this collective dream and in this place of, really feeling our way into what we want. It's a lot of feeling and dreaming into what we want. But now once the moon gets out of the water and gets into the fire of Aries, it's about aligning our emotional will to act. Now we want to, our emotions, once anything gets emotion behind it, it becomes alive. So now like we want to act. We want to act to make, we're ready to act on making this blueprint real. We're lining up our emotions. Whereas before we're like, okay, we're feeling our way through. We're feeling how we want to do this. We're feeling our will rise up to be able to make these dreams and our blueprint a reality. So as the moon continues to move through Aries, on Saturday, the moon is going to square Venus in Capricorn and also going to square Saturn in Capricorn. Now, Venus in Capricorn, Venus is the archetype of what we value and how we attract it and how we relate to it in order to kind of keep it. Is in order to, when you have something in relation to you, like you're in relationship to it, you're keeping it, you're holding it. Saturn in Capricorn is about being the authority. Saturn rules Capricorn, and it's about personal power, and it's about the structures and the forms that we build in order to allow us to exercise that personal power and be the author. Capricorn is the authority. It is the authority of itself. When you're in your personal power, you are the authority of yourself, which means that you are the author of your own existence. You are the authority on it. And Capricorn, or Saturn in Capricorn, builds those structures for us. It builds those structures that we can stand on as the authority of our own existence, as a self, I don't want to say self-made, because we all come from, we're all like, we're all made from everything that has ever touched us. But it's how we process that and how we grow into those experiences and grow from those experiences that become our story and become our empowerment. So that's Saturn in Capricorn. So Venus in Capricorn really, really wants what's real. And Venus in Capricorn will not settle for anything that is not real. It's like, I want what's real and make it so. Period. Like, that's it. Venus in Capricorn does not settle for, fakes and counterfeits, does not settle for that. And that's like materially, emotionally, spiritually, like whatever it is, Venus in Capricorn, it needs to be real. So we might be feeling a little bit of a rub because squares are frictional aspects between the moon and Venus, in that we might see where we've been using our will to make emotional investments is Capricorn, into things that aren't actually real. It's like we might have, I always tease my friend about this. I'm like, people like to paint turds gold, and like say you've got this turd and like you want to paint it gold because you don't want anybody to know that it's a turd. So you're going to paint it gold and you're going to believe really, really hard that this turd is actually a piece of gold, and you're holding it up and you're showing people, look at this piece of gold I have. And everybody's like, honey, that's a turd. Like, what are you talking about? Or maybe it's a piece of glass and you want to believe it's a diamond. Like, whatever it is, like Venus in Capricorn squaring the moon in Aries is like, what have you been emotionally investing in that is just absolute crap for you. Like, where have you been putting where have you been investing your emotional will into things and people and situations that are absolutely not, it's crap. You want to believe that it's something that it isn't. And that's kind of where there might be a little rub there. And asking us, because we're still in blueprint season once again, to revise our blueprint so that we can build a structure. So Moon in Aries squaring Saturn in Capricorn, so that we can actually build an emotional structure that's based on something that is real. What around us is real. So we might be getting like some emotional input about like things that we've been giving our will to, and pouring ourselves into building with things that just are fake. It's like, whether it's fake people, things that just, how we all have things that we kind of know they suck. Like I said, it's like that turd that, so all of us will pick up a turd at one time, whether it's a turd of a relationship, a turd of a job, like whatever, a turd of a belief system. And we'll pour all of our effort into it, i.e. spray painting it gold. And we're like holding it up for everybody, like all the people in our lives. And we're like, look at this piece of gold I found. And everybody's like, honey, no. Like, we can smell it. It's still a turd. And you're like, no, it's not a turd. It's this piece of gold. We might be like having like some emotional reckoning with anything, it might be, like I said, some bittersweet moments of like being like, oh my gosh, I have been investing in turds and trying to build things with turds. I can't do that. Like, I can't do it. So we might have that moment, or, it might be a moment of we've actually done the work of realizing that, what our turds were and like what was fake in our lives. I should really stop saying that. I'm sorry. But realizing what is fake in our lives. And then we see the route that we need to take. We see the route, which then brings me to Mars square the nodes later on in the day. Mars tomorrow is going to square the nodes of the moon. And last week I talked about the nodes of the moon being in Cancer and Capricorn, and they're always opposite each other. It's a continuum. It's an evolutionary continuum of where we've been, which is the south node, and where we want to go, which is the north node. The south node holds a lot of weight and a lot of gravity because we've already done actions there, and actions are just karma. Karma is just actions. So there's actions. There are good actions, there are bad actions, there are neutral actions, whatever. But there's weight there because we've already taken action in that direction. The north node is it's harder because there's no weight. It's a point of evolution. We haven't done this in this way before. So it's harder to get us to kind of like want to move in that direction. But with the south node being in Capricorn, it's about power. It's about your own power, and perhaps where you have either misused it or where you have allowed others to take it from you. So with the north node and our node of evolution being in Cancer, it's about like Cancer's nurturing and feeling secure. This is an axis of security. This is an evolutionary continuum of security. So it's how I read it is, with the north node being in Cancer, it's fulfilling our needs for security, fulfilling our needs for emotional security, fulfilling our needs for nurturing, fulfilling our needs for connection and, a firm base and a home base and, folks to love on and stuff without sacrificing our personal power in order to get that. And so after the moon hits Venus and Saturn and is like, okay, what's fake? And where have you been investing in things that aren't real and trying to build with things that aren't real, and then wondering why what you're building isn't stable, or wondering why it doesn't blossom, it doesn't come to fruition. Now we have the nodes of the moon, which are asking us to go towards what's secure, go towards what's nurturing, go towards what's safe, not just what's shimmering and shining, but might not actually have any substance to it. We're looking for what's real, and we're looking for what's truly going to fulfill us and what we're truly going to be able to build with. And Mars in Aries is the will to act. It is the will to act. So squaring the nodes, it's another frictional aspect. And it's like, okay, am I going to, because it's creating what we call a T-square. And it's like, because Mars is equidistant from the south node and it's equidistant from the north, and it's 90 degrees from both. So Mars is kind of pulled in both directions, but really the thing to do is to go across to Libra. Whenever we have a T-square, you go across to where there isn't a planet in the thing, and across from Mars is Libra. We want to go in the area of relating, reciprocity. Libra is about reciprocity and balance. We have no balance without reciprocity. So if you want to know what's real for you, if you want to know what's nurturing, like if you're back and forth about it, think about what's reciprocal. Think about what's reciprocal for you. Think about who reciprocates for you. Think about what makes you feel that whatever you give out, you are getting back in return. So that's what we're looking at, reciprocity. So if you have any questions tomorrow about, like what direction to go in, and you really thought that this thing was real, and you thought you were going to be building, and you thought you were building, and now you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, and you're revising your blueprint, look in the direction of reciprocity. That's where it's at tomorrow. Reciprocity. We might have some moments where we get to see where the reciprocity is in our lives. And finding that, Mars is the planet of action. So we're going to want to take some kind of action with Mars squaring the nodes, but we're, like I said, looking in the direction of reciprocity. We're going to have a clear idea of what needs to go. Mars not only is the planet of the will and our will to act and action that we take, Mars is also sharp things that cut and sever. So we might be feeling the impetus to sever connections and sever situations and sever things that do not reciprocate, do not provide security, are disempowering, are fake, are not real, are not anything that we can build with or build upon and build any kind of secure foundation with. We're going to have to start jettisoning things, and Mars may want to take an action to cut those things out. So it's also something that we need to be aware of, because these impulses might start showing up tomorrow. Even if they don't show up in your outer life, they may show up in your inner life. And it might not necessarily be this dramatic. It might just be stuff that has been brewing under the surface. And if you've been doing this work constantly, it's not going to be this big bombardment of now you got to look at all this shit. It could just literally be okay, this is coming up now. All right, I see that this is not good for me. I should just really let it go. And it'll be an easier process that way of just kind of taking stock and taking back that power to bring balance into your life and to create a space of reciprocity in your blueprint. So now Sunday, the moon is going to do a couple of things. Sunday's actually a pretty busy day. So we'll start with the moon, because we've already talked about the moon. The moon is going to square Pluto. So the moon in Aries is going to square Pluto in Capricorn. We've already talked about the moon in Aries being our emotional will, and Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is our deepest power. It's the power in the things that make us deeply human. It's the power in the things that are most raw and true about human nature. It's the power in that, when people like to call it shadow, because it's stuff that, good people don't like to talk about. But so it's the power in what we deem shadow, and which is really just people being people and doing what it is that people do, even if it doesn't seem so great at the time. So the moon coming up to square Pluto, especially after squaring Venus, and we're talking about fakeness, and Saturn, and we're talking about building structures, now it's about what part of us allowed that. What part of us that we were potentially ashamed of, or potentially, not in ownership of our full beings because we want to present in a certain way and we don't want to, like I said, it's a lot about, these are things like shadow stuff is stuff that we're ashamed of. So what parts of us emotionally, what parts of us have been shamed into taking something less, taking something that isn't real, taking something that we cannot build upon, and accepting that as truth and wasting our time, essentially. And I mean, nothing is truly a waste of time. We learn from everything, and everything ends when it's supposed to if we let it. But what parts of us that were ashamed and allowed these things to occur and take place? So it's a ping, it's a rub, it's a square. If we haven't been actively processing all of these things over time, it could be it could be something pretty gnarly to have to deal with. Or it could just literally be that we've been doing a bit of work and you feel something and then you kind of look and say, oh, okay, so that relates back to that. And it's, once again, it's a gift of power. Like these are all gifts every time, even when there's like a friction, even when there's a rub, even when there's a ping, it's always a gift, because life wants you to be happy and it wants you to be in joy, and everything, it will give you gifts, even disguised as things that don't feel so great at first. So Sunday could be kind of a hard day where, there might be some not so great feelings about things, like, just how we've been using. You might be like, oh my God, how could I have ever let myself do that? Like what inside of me allowed me to settle for this crap? Like, why? Don't get all hung up in that. Take it for what it is. You see. Now take your power back, because there's nothing to be like, understand the parts of you that needed to do that in order to grow. And then we're moving on. So it could be like a pretty, or like I said, it could be something that kind of blows up in a bigger way if that's what needs to happen. So just be mindful. And if it's happening around you, just show a lot of compassion, because that's a hard place to be. So after the moon goes there with Pluto, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, I don't want to go there again. Like, I got this, like, I don't need to feel ashamed of this. I don't need to feel ashamed of this. Let's put that out there. Don't need to feel ashamed of this, because that's your shadow, and shame, as soon as you claim that shame, you're fully empowered again. So then the moon is going to square the nodes of evolution. So Mars just did that Saturday and decided to cut some things. Now we are getting emotionally on board with that, because and without the shame. Like, now we're like, okay, we're completely on board, because we have gotten this part of ourselves back that we didn't claim, that allowed us to accept things that were not really for us, and accept things that weren't real, and accept things that we could not build with, and sacrificing our power for our security. We're not doing that anymore. So now our emotions are on board with that. And we are emotionally looking for reciprocity. Emotionally, we're looking for that reciprocity in our emotions. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to, once again, go opposite to the opposite sign of Libra. And we're going to be looking for reciprocity. What brings us reciprocity? And we're going to know, because we just did a lot of this work yesterday. So it's really going to be kind of like a click in for us with the moon. And then the moon is going to go on to meet with Mars and Uranus in a conjunction. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch, a boom boom. The moon's going to hit Mars, who just was squaring the nodes the day before. So the moon's going to hit Mars and they're going to talk, be like, yeah, like I just squared the nodes. You just squared the nodes. Yeah, we're totally on board with what needs to happen right now. And then the moon's going to hit Uranus. Uranus is going to take that information that the moon just got from, squaring Venus and squaring Saturn and squaring Pluto and squaring the nodes and then meeting Mars, who also squared the nodes the day before. The moon's going to be like, Uranus, this is what we need to blow up. This is what needs to detonate. And Uranus is going to be like, all right, cool. Got you, bruh. Go on. Keep it moving. And then the moon's going to move into Taurus. Okay? But we're going to be very clear in how we want to move forward and where we are ready to emotionally invest. We're very clear in where we want to invest our actions and our will and our emotions. We're very clear. And then it's going to be, we're getting ready to kind of leave. And I don't want to say detonate, but there might be like a bit of a detonation of like, okay, like this needs to just go. So all of that past stuff that we've just kind of squared and like looked at and, we show Uranus the blueprint and he's like, okay, well, we need to clear that field so that you can build this thing here but this needs to go. So there needs to be an explosion in order for that to happen. They blow up like old structures, and then like you have the rubble, like that's what's going to happen. Like the old structure needs to literally get blown away in order for it just not to be there anymore. So we're preparing for that. That's what we're preparing for. And then the sun is going to conjunct Lilith in the midst of all of this. And we talked last week about Lilith being the rage that comes when our essential truth is denied. So this could once again be a really, really kind of potent time while the moon is hitting Pluto and squaring the nodes and, we're processing potential feelings of some shame and getting that power back. And Lilith is like, okay, this is what's true. And don't you dare deny me. This is what's true about what you want. This is what's true about your ideal. Put it in your consciousness. And so we're in a place of like what's really true, looking at what's really true for us, what is truly, truly, truly our ideal, what we truly, truly want. We can't back away from it now because we've just had all these squares of the moon. We've just had the squares of the nodes. We've just done all of this work. We cannot lie to ourselves right now because we cannot lie. This is a time for absolute truth, and we have got to align our blueprint with the truth. So the sun will be with Lilith, looking at the blueprint and looking at what is true about the blueprint. And you have to be asking yourself, is anything in this blueprint a lie? Is anything in this blueprint based on false stuff? Is it based on anything fake and counterfeit? Can I build with what I have? Can I build with the things that I value? Can I build with these things? Can I build with these people? Can I build with this job? Can I build with this circumstance? Can I build where I am? You have to be asking yourself all of these questions, and all of this stuff is going to be happening on Sunday, like on a very natural level. So I'm not saying that you have to actively ask, but it does help to, intentionally kind of put that into yourself. That you're really looking for what's true for you. And so Sunday is going to be a moment of like really looking at what is true and what really needs to go so that we can prepare to let that go and move along. Also on Sunday, Mercury is moving into Pisces. So this is there's a lot of intense energy Sunday, and Mercury moving into Pisces is actually going to help smooth a lot of that out because our minds are then going to take this blueprint that we have and then take it down from the heights and bring it down into the soul waters. And just like I said earlier, when we have things that are infused with emotions, when our ideas become infused with emotions, when our actions become infused with emotions, that's when things come alive. That's when they have feeling, they have soul. So we're going to give our blueprint soul in the waters of Pisces. Now, Mercury is going to be in Pisces for an extraordinarily long time this year because Mercury is also going to retrograde through Pisces. So this is the beginning part. So we're going to have a lot of time to infuse our blueprints with soul while we're also still revising. So it's going to, that Mercury in Pisces, we're going to be able to, it'll just kind of give a much, I think, nicer form to our minds. Our minds will be able to open up a little bit and soften. It'll soften some of the harshness of a lot of the other aspects that can be a little harder, because it'll put us in more of a framework to be, first of all, more compassionate with ourselves for where we've been and the journey that we've been through. It'll allow us to kind of see the threads and the through lines because we're in the water and that's our emotions. It could also make us more emotional than we might ordinarily be, but I feel like we have the opportunity to just open up emotionally and open up mentally, and allow our minds to understand in a different way, like where we've been and the process that we're undergoing, and infuse that blueprint, infuse the truth of our blueprint with soul. So that's going to be an ongoing process for the next, I want to say, like 6-7 weeks or so. So we're going to be in that process for a while, but tomorrow starts it. And then Monday, the moon will be in Taurus. The moon moves into Taurus, and the moon is it was squaring Venus on Saturday, and on Monday, the moon's going to trine Venus. So that's a flowing energy, because Taurus and Capricorn are, they're the same element, Earth, and they understand each other. So this is a very flowing, very easy aspect. It's like, you don't even have to think about it. It's just happening. There's a mutual exchange all the time. In Taurus, the moon also wants security in Taurus. That's the moon is exalted there. So the moon wants security in Cancer, but it also really wants security in Taurus. And it wants to build secure structures. It's like, how do we build secure structures? And structures where I can be immersed in the feeling of what's around me. Once moon in Taurus wants to have the creature comforts. It wants the things of earth around it in order for it to feel emotionally secure. It's emotional security. That's what Taurus is. It's emotional security. So that's what it wants. And it wants that through things and people and, having things. Taurus, Venus rules Taurus. So it's like having things, having nice things, having things around you. What you have brings you emotional security. We've already talked about Venus in Capricorn, wants something real. Now we're going to be taking kind of emotional stock of what we have that really, really brings us that emotional security. And it could be things, it could be people, but it's not, we're going to be looking and taking stock of what's bringing us emotional security. And it'll be an easy flow. And it'll be grounding. It'll be very, very grounding for us to actually see and touch what is tangibly here for me that gives me emotional security. Will be that's Monday's kind of thing. And then Tuesday, after we come off of all of this stuff, because all of this is building to the frictional aspect that the moon makes every twice a moon cycle, which is moon square the sun. So we're coming into our first quarter square at 5:26 on Tuesday. And the moon in Taurus, moon towards the end of Taurus, is going to be squaring the sun in Aquarius. These are both fixed signs. And like I said, the moon in Aquarius, the moon in Taurus is looking for emotional security through tangible things. The sun in Aquarius, after having just met up with Lilith and expanding the truth of that blueprint, the sun in Aquarius is holding that blueprint. Like we are conscious of our blueprint and what we want. And this aspect is going to creates a bit of friction about what we tangibly have in our lives and what we need to tangibly build in our lives to create that emotional stability. So it's going to be intel for the sun to like more revisions to this blueprint. And Taurus tends to get stuck. So there could be where Aquarius is like a lot more like objective about things. Taurus is far more subjective. So there could be a rub about like what you want to let go of and what you have to let go of in order to allow the blueprint to be and live. We're going to have some moments of, like I said, I feel like this week is just going to be very bittersweet in a lot of ways, as far as knowing what we need to let go of, knowing what's not really here for us, knowing that we've invested time and effort and money and ourselves and blood and sweat and tears into stuff that we really just need to walk away from now. And that is going to be Tuesday's rub. Okay, that's the rub that we're building up to all this weekend, is that moment on Tuesday when we're like, okay, and now we really need to let this go. And there's a part of you that's like, but I don't want to. But you have to. And so that's Tuesday. In order for us to have this blueprint and in order for us to know what we want to make and what we want to build, this is the halfway point between the new moon and the full moon. So we've done all of this work revising this blueprint. And now it's like, okay, now we have to let things go. Like that's what this moon is telling us. We must let these things go. And these are the things that need to go. These are the physical things in your life that need to leave or be rearranged or repositioned. And Taurus does not like any of that. Taurus is very, very resistant to change. It's a sign that really likes to dig its heels in. And the way it is the way it is. And we can't build with that. We have to let things go. So this is going to be a time of understanding what it is that we need to let go of and preparing to do that as the moon keeps waxing to fullness for the following week's full moon. So Wednesday, the moon's going to move into Gemini, and that's going to free us up a lot emotionally, because the moon in Gemini really, that is emotional intelligence, the moon in Gemini. So we're a lot more objective about how things need to be. So it'll help after having that square where we're like, I don't really want to let this go. We'll be able to emotionally back up and look at both sides of the situation and understand that we need to actually actively let things go. And it won't feel as dire as it did when the moon was in Taurus. So that'll be good. It'll be a much lighter place to be. And then Mars at the end of Aries is going to conjunct Uranus at the end of Aries. And it's such a good thing that the moon moves into Gemini, as this happens, because this is when the shit just hits the fan. And I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, this is what we've all been waiting for. This is our moment where our will is free. We are free to do what we want. All the stuff that we just got done, all these cycles of aligning our will to be and our will to express and our will to connect and our will for, and, our need for reciprocity and our need for, like-mindedness and love and nurturing and all of these things. Now we are breaking away. That meeting that the moon and Mars and Uranus all had on Sunday, where they were, basically the moon was like, okay, this is kind of what I found, and this is kind of what I feel needs to go after squaring the nodes and squaring Saturn and squaring Venus and squaring Pluto. This is what I see needs to go. And now Mars was like, yes, I concur. I too have squared the nodes, and this is what I found to be reciprocal for me. This is what this is what I want to cut. This is what I want to cut. And Uranus and Mars get together and they cut it. It's time to cut. It's time to cut anything old that we were in. It's time to, it could be a sudden thing. Life generally doesn't work that way. It might just literally be a process. But I also feel like we've been in this process for so long that there is a sense of kind of, it's just time to move on. And what was there should not be there anymore, and what is still there is what needs to be there, period. So there could be that kind of sense of just like suddenly like we're done with X thing, and now we're moving on. And then Thursday, this is another like next big day. So Thursday the 14th, Mars moves into Taurus. All right, so this whole time Mars has been in Aries and has been, getting all of the information from like, Jupiter and Sagittarius and Venus when Venus was in Sagittarius, and then like, Saturn in Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn and the nodes and, the full moon and the sun and all in Aquarius. So Mars has been getting a lot of information about what needs to happen with this blueprint. Okay. And after meeting with Uranus, they just cut off like huge chunks of things that do not need to be in the blueprint any longer. Okay, they just got rid of a lot of stuff that does not belong in the blueprint. It's gone. And now Mars moves into Taurus, where this is now the will to build. It's the will to build. The will to build security. The will to grow. The will to attain and feel what's around you and be in it, that it's the will to grow and be. So now Mars is going to begin the process of building. That's what's happening. It's the start of the process of building what's in the blueprint. As the blueprint is becoming alive in our minds in Pisces, and still with the sun in Aquarius, we're holding it in our consciousness. It's in our consciousness. The blueprint's there. And then Mars begins to clear the earth. It's churning the earth in order to begin the process of building. So that's what happens as Mars moves into Taurus on Thursday. And then Friday, we have the moon in Gemini, trine the sun in Aquarius. And that's at the end of, it's like towards the end, like around 26 degrees, towards the end of Aquarius in Gemini. Moon trine the sun is another flowing aspect. It's Gemini and Aquarius are both air signs, so they have an affinity. So this is a very, very easy aspect where the moon is now, we're infusing the consciousness of the blueprint into our emotional intelligence. We're infusing the consciousness. Mercury's in Pisces, so there's the soul. Mercury rules Gemini, so the soul and the consciousness of the blueprint are getting infused, and there's like a communication going on about how the blueprint is forming. It's becoming alive. It's coming to life. Like we're getting life into this blueprint. So we might start to see more and more as things start moving away, we might start seeing more and more what's coming in for us. Just ever so slowly, like the doors will start to open where maybe you couldn't see doors before. Maybe doors will start to open and you'll be able to understand and see and think in new ways about what you want to do in your everyday. Gemini also rules our everyday. existence, in our community, like what's changing, especially with, from Aquarius, which rules our groups and our friends. Things are changing in the circles that we live in the circles that we move in. Things have to change now because our blueprints are different. And what does not resonate in our blueprint needs to now move to different areas of our lives. So there could be that as well, like something in your everyday, something about your everyday thinking and everyday motion and everyday connections needs to shift so that you can implement this blueprint and have it be a part of your daily life. So you'll start to see places where the blueprint will now have a more active role in your life on the regular, as opposed to before, Uranus and Mars met up and things were still there that, maybe weren't going to, that weren't coming along for this new phase. Then the moon moves into Cancer. And we have the moon in Cancer, that's its home sign. So there's a connection there. We are understanding, we want to feel what's nurturing. So we just had all of these big shifts. And now we just kind of need to rest. To me, this is like a resting period. It's a moment to just kind of take everything in and let our emotions, we've just been through a lot. Let our emotions just kind of be where they are, and let go of while also letting go of any emotion, like any extra emotional attachments that we've had to things that we've had to let go of. Like I said, this is a bittersweet week coming up because we are letting go of a lot of things that we thought were going to be with us, we thought were sustaining us, we thought were, really good for us. And even though they served their purpose for a time, they were good for us for a time. They got us here. But it's time to let some things go. So I feel like when the moon moves into Cancer, it's really going to be a time of just kind of sitting with that, and sitting with the things that have to go, but also allowing in those new and more secure and reciprocal relationships and reciprocal situations and circumstances into our lives. So when the moon moves into Cancer, it's going to sextile Mars in Taurus also, which not only is it so the moon will be in a space of taking in, and also this is the nurturing part of our emotions. This is another form of emotional security, but it's more about emotional nurturance and about being fed and what feeds us on an emotional level. And it's going to sextile Mars and Taurus, and it's going to be, okay, what are we building here? Like, how are we breaking this ground to make sure that we're giving ourselves what we need after this big, upheaval that's happening? And it's going to keep, these are building aspects because we're building to the full moon. That'll be next week, but we're asking ourselves now to put in, okay, like we need an emotional sustenance. That's Cancer, emotional sustenance. What are we growing for our emotional sustenance? What are we calling in for our emotional sustenance? So there's an opportunity to kind of plant those seeds and see where those doors start to lead for us. So that is the astrology for the week. It's kind of a bit and a lot of stuff that the moon's doing. And the tarot card for the week is the Two of Pentacles, or the Two of Discs, or the Two of Earth. And that's a card, twos in the tarot take the potential of the one and then bring awareness to that potential. And in that potential and the awareness of the potential, there becomes dynamic action and action to create something new, which will then turn into a 3 eventually. But right now we're at that dynamic tension of creating and moving something and molding something. So 2 of Earth, this really, really reminds me of, Mars moving into Taurus, and, the upcoming full moon in Virgo, where I always feel like this card is a card of taking clay and shaping it and moving it. We're creating, we're moving. Things are moving. Things are shifting around us. We're making something new, and we're making it, and we don't yet know what it is. But we're forming something. Something new is taking shape. Something new is forming. And astrologically, this card is Jupiter in Capricorn, which is expanding our structures. Expanding our structures by what we can build, and believing that we can expand our structure, and taking and allowing new expanded structures to take shape. That is the energy of this card. And that is the energy, this part of the bittersweet energy of this week of, I feel like, massive, huge, either energetic or physical departures that need to take place, and probably both on a lot of levels. And then welcoming and allowing what wants to be formed and what wants to be shaped and what wants to come into existence, allowing that the space to come and allowing those doors to open for us. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening. It is always such a joy and a pleasure to get to share this passion with you. If you are interested in learning more about me, my work, or finding out how the astro is working in your life and in your body, please visit my website, elementsinalchemy.com, or follow along on Instagram at elementsinalchemy. And I just want to wish you all an easy, peaceful week full of open doors and easy departures. And that's all, folks. Much love. Till next week.